days after infection. But when the viral load in the body exceeds a certain limit, they begin to develop symptoms such as fever, cough, and fatigue. Having overrun our innate immunity, the novel coronavirus is now replicating itself at will. However, our immune system hasn't given up yet. This is when our secondary defense force, our adaptive immune system, is deployed. One of the phagocytes that had been fighting the virus is moving off to a different location. It's now acting as a messenger, seeking reinforcements. The messenger attaches itself to a blue immune cell. Let's look closer. The messenger cell is holding out a fragment of the novel coronavirus it had devoured earlier, on something that looks like a clasp. The blue immune cell accepts it. This is enemy intel. The immune cell is now activated. This is a killer T cell ready to attack. These killer T cells specifically target cells which are infected with the novel coronavirus. Fragments of the virus can be seen protruding from the surfaces of infected cells. Killer T cells compare these fragments with the intel they'd received earlier. If they match and their target is confirmed, they commence their attack. The virus as well as the cell are completely obliterated. A cutting-edge microscope has caught this moment of attack by a killer T cell. In green is the killer T cell. Once it attaches itself to its target cell, in blue, it injects a toxic substance, shown in red. It destroys the infected cell along with the viruses inside. However, it now appears that the novel coronavirus may even be able to dodge a killer T cell attack. Recent findings from China suggest that the novel coronavirus has a unique quality setting it apart from other viruses. It seems to target those clasps on an infected cell, which hold out viral fragments. Their research has suggested that the virus is breaking down these clasps even before they can reach out of the cell surface, reducing their numbers by 60%. This makes it much harder for the killer T cells to locate infected cells. The infection remains unchecked, and the virus continues to multiply. In retaliation, our immune system sends out another unit, the B cells. B cells also get their enemy intel through the contact with viral fragments, and they produce powerful projectile weapons. See how the B cell starts to release those small yellow particles? These projectiles are called antibodies. When magnified under a microscope, it looks like the letter Y. How do they work? Antibodies released from B cells close in on the novel coronavirus. They bind to those spikes, the fake keys that viruses use to invade human cells. Once the cell is covered with antibodies, the virus can no longer infect or replicate. With nowhere to go, they are devoured one by phagocytes. Once you've reached this stage, you're out of the woods. Your body will start recovering slowly. But the work of T cells and B cells doesn't end here. They retain their memories about the virus and continue to stay alert in our bodies. So if there is another coronavirus invasion, they will be ready to fight back. These special units study the enemy, launch an intensive attack, and even after repelling them, they remain vigilant to protect our bodies from harm. It's our adaptive immune system in action. Vaccines being developed against COVID-19 are attempting to enhance the power of this adaptive immune system. Fragments from an attenuated virus are injected into the body so that information on the novel coronavirus can be passed on safely to T cells and B cells. In this way, the adaptive immune system can learn about the enemy before any infection occurs and be prepared to attack. Researchers are working as quickly as they can to ensure the safety of these vaccines and maximize their effectiveness. While vaccine trials continue, the virus spreads worldwide. It has infected more than 21 million people and taken the lives of over 760,000. So what may have happened in the bodies of patients who became critical and ultimately lost their lives? The University Medical Center Hamburg-Eppendorf in Germany has conducted more than 150 autopsies. Scientists here discovered something unusual in the lungs of COVID-19 patients.
From our past studies, where we learned that with every new disease there are new findings when you do autopsy on a regular basis, we thought it might be very interesting from a scientific point of view to get more into detail in COVID-19. We were really surprised about the very high incidence of venous thromboembolisms and pulmonary embolisms. We discovered that within the first 12 patients, we had about 1/3 of patients who died from pulmonary embolism.
Pulmonary embolism is a disease where blood clots form in the lungs. This is a blood clot that was found in the lung of a COVID-19 patient. It caused their blood circulation to fail, and the resulting lack of oxygen led to their death. What could have caused these blood clots? A closer look shows many of these blue dots amongst the red clots of blood. They are the dead remains of a type of phagocyte called neutrophils that had caused the clots. Clotting is triggered when our immune system goes into overdrive, a phenomenon called a cytokine storm. When viruses replicate in huge numbers, our immune cells can become overly activated. Researchers had long suspected that hyperactive immune cells were inadvertently damaging our blood vessels. And in order to close the wound, platelets in the blood would come together to form blood clots, becoming bigger and ultimately blocking circulation. But here's the important point. Recent research has shed light on an even more disturbing mechanism where a cytokine storm can trigger blood clot formation.
When neutrophils start to detect that there are these pathogens circulating in the bloodstream, they will start to take their DNA inside of the cell and they expel it outside the cell. They spit it out to form something called a neutrophil extracellular trap. We know that certain cytokines that are released in the setting of COVID-19 can prime the neutrophil and make the neutrophil more likely to form nets.
Neutrophil extracellular traps, called NETs, is essentially a suicide attack, and it was first discovered in 2004. This image, captured by the Max Planck Institute in Germany, shows the moment of attack. The yellow phagocyte is 1/100th of a millimeter wide. It self-detonates, hurling its contents toward the enemy in red. This web-like structure is the phagocyte's DNA. The cell sacrifices itself in a desperate effort, taking advantage of its DNA's sticky texture to trap the enemy. This video shows a phagocyte releasing its DNA. You can see it in orange, just bursting out from that cell. Normally, such attacks will not cause any clotting. But if there is a cytokine storm, overly active phagocytes in our bloodstream self-detonate in huge numbers. If too many DNA nets have been cast, they can even scatter blood components in the vicinity. Lumps from these blood components form clots and bind to each other to become larger and larger, to the point where they can completely block blood vessels. Despite trying to save us, these extreme suicide attacks backfire by forming blood clots that can cause death.
COVID-19, as you know, is caused by the SARS-2 coronavirus, and this is a novel virus that our bodies have not encountered before. As a result of that, the bodies don't know how to respond to it. And so they are pulling out every tool that we have in the toolbox to try and fight this infection. What this means is the infection results in unregulated amounts of inflammation. And so inflammation can be very helpful in the beginning to try and fight off infection and help to repair organs. But if the inflammation is unregulated and continues at high levels for long periods of time, that inflammation can actually be damaging to the body.
Autopsy results have shown that blood clots were the direct cause of death for 1/3 of those who lost their lives. In order to prevent such excessive self-detonations, cytokine storms must be suppressed. This is why drugs to dampen the immune response are being trialed as a potential treatment for COVID-19. Armed with a new strategy, hope is now on the horizon to help patients with the severest symptoms. Our immune system is our ultimate weapon in the fight against pathogens.